Alright guys, this last video should be fairly short. We just kind of have to close the gap. So we've done all the whole system. The only thing we have to do now is essentially instantiate the controller and see if it works. So we already wrote our controller. To be honest, I'm having a hard time understanding, like I don't really know if I have the greatest way to determine who instantiates the controller. I go back and forth on this. For a while I was having views instantiate the controller. So if we did that, essentially when a tape measure view is created, that view would be responsible for starting up the controller that manages, your interaction on that tape measure. And that seemed kind of compelling because as a user you tend to act on a view, and so it seems, well, you need the view for it to go. And I went down that road for a bit, but after a while I don't like it because the views are way out there on the edge. We want our views to be dumb. All right, we want to put little effort into our views as possible. Views are very difficult to test. Views change very often compared to the rest of our stuff, and we want to just put as little details into the view as possible. They should just be reflecting a model is really what it comes down to, a view model. So I'm starting to lean away from doing that. I'm starting to what I'm doing now, well, let's just talk about it. Let's show what we're doing now. So now what I've done is in our mouse controllers here, I have all of our current mouse controllers that we've built, and I've started making this thing. It's just a simple function called make mouse controllers. And this is where I just call this make mouse controllers once from main. So on startup, we make all of the controllers we need to make, and they're just sitting out there working. They don't come, they don't go, they're persistent. The controllers are always there and doing their thing, and the controllers themselves determine whether or not to, based on states like, is the left button, is the right tool selected, whether or not they continue the action into the use case. So with that in mind, let's look at this. So we created this controller called drag tape body, and so let's put that into our mouse controller, not our context, our make mouse controller. So at the bottom here, we're going to do a new drag tape body. And what do we need for this? I've already spread a lot of these, so I think we've got this. Mouse input. No. What? Scene mouse input is the first one. What else we got? Tape repo. Tools. Oh, we need to get a use case. I don't think I have this one in here. So that is, what is this? Drag tape use case. So I'll pull that out of our use case context. I'm just destructuring all this stuff up top. So drag tape body is our use case. And let's put that into here. And we'll add that down here. And there we go. Oh, we don't need two of those. So main is already calling this. So at this point, our controller is hooked up. Now there's one more thing that we got to do that we kind of forgot to do a while ago. If you remember when we wrote this drag tape controller, one of the things we're checking is we're doing this thing where we grab, when we get in this case, when we get a mouse down, a press, the input system will tell us, well, what are you pressing on? Is it the ground? Is it nothing? And it returns this scene object ID. And that object ID is important. That's the unique identifier for whatever it is we've pressed on. And what we're doing is we're checking our tape repo to see if the picked object is a tape measure. And if it is, hey, we're good to go. Well, we know we're pressing on a tape measure, and that with these other checks determine whether or not we need to start sending or manipulating the use case at this point. So we need to set up this way, set up the scene object so that when we do the picking, we have to essentially the way we do this with in Babylon is we attach some meta to the meshes, and then the input system knows to check for this particular tag in the meta to get the scene object ID. So I've done this in the stake. Here it is. Oh, it's already highlighted. So you can see here are the stakes. When I put the stakes out, we add this metadata called scene object ID. So we need to put that metadata on our tape measure view. So back to here. Here's our body mesh. This is the tape measure body mesh dot metadata, and that's going to be equal to the tape ID. So this is how we kind of close that gap. So the mesh is created. It attaches its metadata to the mesh, and then the input system knows to check the mesh for metadata for this scene object ID, and if it finds it, it knows, hey, this is a scene object. We're going to count this as an important click. We're going to register this ID, and we're going to send that with our information about clicking. All right. So with that all hooked up, let's test. Let's see if this works. So refresh this guy. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start it up. In between this and the last videos, I did add some more functionality to the tape. I've made it so we can create tape measures. So I'm going to grab one off of here. I'm going to drag it off the stake. You can see I've set it all up so this works. Now in this video, what we demonstrated was being able to click on the body and drag it around. So let's see if it works. I click and I drag. Hoy! Look at that. It works perfect. So it's exactly as we expect. So now I've added some more stuff so we can add batter boards in here. We can add strings to these batter boards. And now we can add a tape here and a tape here, but I can come back in now and we can drag the tape around by grabbing the head of that tape and pulling it around. Pretty cool. All right, I think with that, we're going to call this video series done. There's a few things we'll want to do. We need to add some. We're going to probably convert this to a button, kind of like when you turn on the batter board, you've got a delete and a pan button or a drag button. Probably going to follow that same method with the tape measures, where you can delete it. We'll have a delete button and then a drag button out on top of the tape measures. So we'll kind of refactor this a little bit, but we're going to call this series complete.